Hello everyone and welcome to the Rising Giant, Incredible Journeys Behind podcast. This time we are going to do something that we've already done before, which is I'm going to tell my story. It is actually something that I've done for the first episode of the podcast, but at that time I was in my bedroom with my phone and the small microphone and I was just recording my voice. And since now we're having all this set up with the videos and the guests coming in and it's very professional, we decided to retell my story again. So this time you can also see me. All right, I have my notes, even though it is my own story, because I've been playing for so long and I feel like I've changed so many times that I just sometimes I forget what I've been through. Okay, so I started, obviously I'm coming from Slovenia, from a small town called Maribor, and this is exactly where I started to play football when I was 5 years old. How it happened, actually mom and dad asked me what I want to do. I needed to pick something. They said, you have to have some activities. What do you want to do? And at that time, I vividly remember that I think it was one of the Grand Slams going on the TV. And I said, well, I want to play tennis. And my dad goes, I don't think that's a possibility because we don't have enough money for that. I guess he sensed that already at that time, he sensed that I'm probably going to want to be a professional tennis player. And in order to be that, everyone knows that it takes a lot of money. So he said, pick something else. And my second choice was football. And to be honest, right now, I'm glad that my dad said that because football is definitely my passion, my favorite sport and favorite thing to do. So I'm actually grateful for that thing. So I said football. And my dad took me in the Maribor to a small-sided football club. It was called NK Panda. Obviously, I was the only girl among all the boys. And I spent 1 year there playing like a futsal. But it was interesting because it was on a concrete floor and it was outside. So that was my first experience training football. And after that year, my dad goes, so do you want to continue? What do you want to do? And I said, Dad, I really want to play a real football. So he was laughing and he said, okay, we have a family friend whose son is the same age as you are. I'm going to take you to one of his games. So I remember it was a Sunday. It was a very sunny Sunday. And we went to see that boy playing. And I remember standing there and I said, oh my gosh, this is it. And it's crazy because I was 6 years old. And at that time, obviously, a 6-year-old kid usually doesn't know what he or she wants to do with the life. But I remember I was there and I said, yeah, I definitely want to do that. And I'm going to do everything possible in order to become a professional football player, even though I had no role models when it comes to women's. I had no idea that this is a possibility, but I can still remember exactly the same spot where I was standing. And the next day we signed up. The club was called NK Železničar, very, very small club also. And obviously I was the only girl on a boys team, although I had a short hair. So it was funny because when we had games, obviously other teams didn't know I'm a girl. So as soon as my parents and obviously the parents of my team started to shout my name is when the other people who were at the game started to look around because they were surprised that I'm a girl playing a football. And especially at that time, the mentality in Slovenia was that football is just not for girls. And unfortunately, even today, sometimes, especially moms, they don't let their daughters go and play football because of that mentality. Anyway, it was one of the best times of my life. Boys took me in very nice, very well. I remember every single time I got new boots or a new football ball, I was sleeping with those boots, and I was hugging a football ball, and I couldn't sleep before the tournaments or before the games. So it was very nice. I was one of the best on the team, and I remember 2 other guys who were also very good. I was kind of switching back and forth between them, being in the pair with them, because they all wanted to be with me. That great period unfortunately ended when I was 12 years old, because at that time in Slovenia the rule was that the girls simply cannot play with the boys later than 12 or 13 years old. So I was 12 and they told me, listen, like, you have to find another team. And that was the first obstacle that I faced in my journey, on my journey. So at that time, they still allowed me to play with them for another year, just to train with them. And I was lucky because at the same time as they told me that I have to leave, another club formed, which was a women's club. But it was funny because on that club, I was 13 years old and the oldest girl was 40. We had girls who had all different skill sets. Some girls just started to play football, didn't even know how to kick the ball. And there was me already training for 6 years. So I was 13, the other one was 40. It could be my mom, but we were all thrown in the same thing. So the trainings were not great. And that was the period when I started to train on my own. And I know that it sounds interesting or maybe weird that a kid who was 13, 14 years old decides that they want to play professional football and now they're going to train on their own. But this is exactly what happened. I remember when we were training, it was like a concrete wall with a goal drawn on it with the numbers. And this is where I spent pretty much majority of my afternoons. Also, I played with the boys. I continued to play with the boys on the street. This is something that nowadays you don't see a lot. But whenever I was a kid, this is where pretty much I learned all my football knowledge. Playing street football with the boys, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3. It didn't matter. We just had fun. And this is how my trainings continued. And this was my football academy. Just me, a ball, the wall, a few cones. And I remember I was very creative. I was using everything in order to become better, in order to train. I made a ladder out of pretty much a duct tape. I used hurdles, but those hurdles were made of my mom's laundry detergent. I remember my conditioning was, running up and down the stairs because we lived on the 10th floor. I didn't have individual coaches. I didn't even have a normal coach that would be a good coach, because the coach that we had was very bad coach. Didn't learn anything. And unfortunately, sometimes it still is the case that on the woman's side, the coaches are not as good as on the men's side. And that was definitely happening in my case, where the coach was just very bad. And I needed to invent things on my own. I remember at some point, my mom was helping me to train, and we were living in an older apartment. And the way the doors were made was that above the door, it was maybe this much of a glass. And she was throwing me the ball. I was training and I was kicking the ball back, and I broke the window. I took the whole thing out. But, it just kind of says how much my parents supported me, because even though, they obviously had no clue that for me it is possible to be a professional footballer at some point, they still supported me. When the guy who made a women's club quit, my dad became a president. Otherwise, I wouldn't have anywhere to play. My mom, she is a nurse, and my mom was our physio. And she was also, washing laundry after every single game. Another parents were helping with driving us around. So it was how my football academy looked like. I spent there at that club from 13 to 18. So, I was 13 years old when I came in, 18 when I left. I used to play for the U17 and the senior team. Obviously, the level was very, very low, but I just kept dreaming. I kept working individually by myself, like I said. And I also had, at that time, in high school, I had a strength and conditioning coach who was a track and field coach. And he kind of pulled me on the track and field team and helped me with the conditioning in that way. Also, a very, very interesting or very funny story is that every single time we went on a vacation, my dad was annoyed because I took with me everything, the hurdles, the cones, everything that I had, it had to go with me. And that just, this is how dedicated I was, even though I had no clue how I'm going to get to that professional environment or professional level where someone's going to pay me in order to do what I love to do. When I was 17, I went to a different club in Slovenia. They called me, and the club was named ŽNK Krka. To be honest, I don't think that club even exists anymore, but that was my first Champions League experience. So I was 17 years old, and we qualified for Champions League, and I was still the old version of Champions League. Obviously now it's the same as men's. At that time, it was you just played one team, one game. If you won, you went further. If not, you went home. And I remember at that time we went to Sweden. We played against a club called Linköping, and that club was very professional for our standards. Obviously, we lost the game, but for me it was huge because it was the representation of something that it could be at some point where I could be in my future. And it just gave me another huge motivation. And it brings me to the next chapter in my story, and next interesting story, how things unfold whenever you don't really expect. Whenever it was a holiday, and I was in between my junior and senior year in the high school. So between my third and the fourth year of the high school, and in that fourth year, you decide where you want to go to study. And one of my coaches on that team that was not great in Slovenia came and asked, like, so what do you want to do whenever you're done in high school? And I said, I don't know, I just, the only thing I'm interested in is playing football and doing something with the sports. So I'm probably just going to go to the capital and study sports, like exercise science at that university. And he was like, my brother, he studied and played football in USA. Would you be interested? And I said, well, obviously I would be interested. I have to talk with my parents. But yeah, I would love to do that. Because at that time, if I stayed in Slovenia and I went to school there, university, I would probably never be able to go pro. Why? Because it's crazy that it was a sports university and that the curriculum and the whole thing was set up the way that was not in the favor of professional athletes. So if you went to school there, you were pretty much in school all day and you were not able to train. So my faith, if I would stay in Slovenia, would be just probably, being amateur my whole life. But going to USA, because they have a different system where if you want to play sports, obviously you have to go to school. But if you want to go to school and you want your school to be paid for, you have to play sports. So he was like, would you be interested? I said, yeah. We sat down with my mom and dad, and we decided that we want to do it. So what we did is we took all the material, like everything that I had from like U17 national team and some games that were filmed. In that time, we didn't film many games, but everything that we had, we put in one video and we sent it to the 400 schools in USA. So that was step number one. And then we were waiting for those schools to come back and, offer something. The funniest thing is that my English sucked at that time. I almost failed my freshman year of high school. So my first year in high school, I got a paper that said that I'm not reaching a minimal standard. So I almost failed my high school because of English. And then I decided to go to USA and study in English. In order for me to have a green light to go there, obviously I needed the offer from the university, but I also needed to pass some tests that were two tests, SAT and TOEFL. SAT included reading part, writing part, and listening part, and then TOEFL included pretty much everything. You had to read, you have to listen, you had to speak. It was everything under the cameras, everything on the computer. And keep in mind, I don't speak English well. I was studying. It's not like I was lazy. I was studying, but I was just not good at languages, which is crazy because obviously now I'm fluent in not just English, but many other languages, which I think it's just a representation of if you really want something, you can achieve it. And at that time, I studied for the test. I got to the SAT and I got the paper in front of me. There were two different versions of the test. I got a paper and the first part was writing an essay. I probably wrote 4 or 5 sentences and that was it. I failed miserably. And then I was thinking, obviously, we had breaks between the different sections and I said, I have to do something. So what I did, I realized that the girl in front of me has the same test as I have. And at the next break, I said to her, listen, like, why are you going to the USA? Like, are you playing any sports? And she said, no, I just want to go to study. So I was like, oh, okay. So you must be good in English. And I explained to her that I want to go to play football and I just need her to help me with my English exam. So she agreed. And I know that this is cheating. I know that it's not the greatest example, but at the same time, I feel like, it's just something that the universe or the God or whoever, whatever you want to call, it sent me a help because I really wanted something. I studied for it. I did everything. And then, I did my part and whatever I was missing, they provided. And she said yes, she agreed to let me copy her test. So I copied her exam and then, I passed that exam. I still had to pass the other one. And for my school, I needed 61 points. And I made it with the 63 points, and on the end I got a full ride to that school in USA, and it's called UTM, so UT Martin, University of Tennessee. And I feel like I kind of justified me cheating with then actually learning English. But then my journey just started. I came to USA and I thought I'm not gonna miss anyone. Wow, like I'm going overseas, new experience, and especially I'm not gonna miss my family. I got there and I was homesick for 6 months. I cried every single night going to bed. And in January, I didn't want to go back. Imagine you go to a different country, you don't speak the language, you have to go to school and read. For example, I just went normally in school. I had English, I had history, I had everything. So for history, for example, I had to read 20 pages in English every single week and answer quizzes, the test. I had no social life. The only thing I did was training and studying, and I was miserable. I wanted to quit, but my dad, he had to get another job in order for me to be able to support me and to just pay for a flight, just a flight. Imagine I had a full ride, which is at that time 35,000 euros every single year. So multiply that by 4. So that was paid for. Everything else was paid for, but he still had to get another job just to be able to send me to USA and back. So first of all, I had no heart to just quit. And second of all, my passion for football and desire to just live my dreams, just to succeed, was simply bigger than, me wanting to quit. So come January, I go back and the entire world opens. I learned English and I started to just hang out with everyone on the campus, especially it's crazy because for someone who's never been to USA and had a college experience, it's very hard to understand how it looks like, but it's literally a movie. I remember I was hanging out in the cafeteria every single day with so many different athletes. I was going to different games. I was friends with so many people, and I met, I made connections for life. I would never change that experience for anything. But, it's kind of crazy what it happens when you don't give up and when you don't quit right before, the world opens up for you. Obviously, after that, it wasn't all, sunshine and rainbows, but it was another step forward. And for me, since that experience, I knew that I can do absolutely anything, whatever I want to do. I can achieve anything, because if I was able to go to a different, not just different country, but overseas without anyone, by myself for the first time, didn't speak a language, but then, was able to play, was able to go to school, was able to, make connections. I can do anything. And everyone is the same and everyone has the same capacity to do that. You just have to make a first step and don't quit whenever, the first obstacle comes. Anyway, I was there in USA and I was still not a professional. They paid me, they paid for my school, but I still was not a professional football player. So I kept going. I remember my routine. I woke up every morning at 5:30 in the morning. At 6, I was in the gym by myself. And I was done by 7:30. At 8, I was in the class. And then in the afternoon, I had training with the team. And that was going on for 4 years. After 4 years, I started to think, okay, I'm done with the school now. I have to get myself into the professional environment, into the professional club. How am I going to do that? Obviously, agents didn't really exist at that time. If you look at the men's football, every 14-year-old now who has, some talent, parents find him an agent right now. That was not my case, and especially, that was not the case in women's football at the time. So I had to find another creative way. I remember it was I think it was Sunday afternoon. I was just in my room on the campus and I was watching YouTube, and a professional women's football game came up, NWSL. So the professional league in USA. And I got an idea. I had to do an internship. So I was studying exercise science and wellness. And for the last semester, I had to do an internship with, in my field, with one of the teams. I could have done it anywhere. School, I could go home and do it in Slovenia or anywhere. So my idea was, I'm going to do that internship with one of the teams in the NWSL, so in the professional environment, which is going to be my way in. Obviously, I'm not going to tell them before I get there. I told that idea to one of my professors. He was very much into the football, and he's from England. And immediately he was like, yeah, I like the idea, I'm going to help you. So what we did is we wrote a letter to all of those clubs, and we sent a physical letter, we sent an email, and I called every single club. Again, keep in mind, I came from the point where I didn't speak English at all, and now calling the clubs across USA in order to get an internship. So I was calling clubs, and one of the clubs that picked up was Western New York Flash. And they said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want an internship, but we're not offering that. Like, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to come and I want to just observe how you coach. I want to coach as well, kids. I just want to help with whatever help you need." And they said, "Okay, but we don't offer that. We don't pay for that. Like, you can come, but you do it for free." And I said, "Great. I see a bigger picture. I'm not getting paid, but I get the connections, I get in." So I was very lucky because Western New York Flash was in Buffalo at the time, which is in, the state of New York. It's not New York City, but it's still expensive. So obviously I didn't have a job. I was not working, but I had to pay for myself there. And they were very nice. They said, "If you want, we can get you a host family." And I said, "Okay, that's great." So the kid was in their academy, and the family literally took me in as their own kid and gave me everything. They feed me. I was obviously sleeping there. I even got a car. So I got my second family. I'm still in touch with them. Very nice. It's crazy because when I got there, the kid was 12 years old, and now she's out of college, which it's crazy how old I am already. Don't want to think about that. But I got there and I started to do whatever they needed me to do. I was training kids, and I was helping in the office, and I kept on training because my plan was to get on the team. They didn't know that. So pros were coming in. I came in on, I think, beginning of January, and pros were coming in March. So I said to the coach, I said, "Listen, I still want to play after I'm done with the school. Can I train with the team?" And he said, "I don't know if you're good enough." I said, "Okay." And he's like, "If you want, we're going to have tryouts for the girls. You can try out, and if you're good enough, you can train with us." I said, "Okay, it's great." So, funny story, I was sending out the letters to those girls who were going to try out, who were spotted by the club, because obviously at that time you had to be drafted in order to be able to join the professional team if you played college or university in USA. So I was sending those girls who were not drafted, but were still spotted by the clubs, an invitation to come and try out. And then I tried out with them and they picked me. So me and another girl, which is, I think it's funny because, there were probably at least 30 or 40 girls who had the same opportunity. And 1 minute he was telling me, "You're not good enough," or "I don't know if you're good enough." But then I was the one he chose. It felt good, but at the same time, it's just another proof of, you're creating your opportunities and you just have to put yourself out there in order for you to, or for life to give you some things back. I trained with the team for another, I think, 2 or 3 months. And then they told me I'm not able to join the team properly. I cannot be rostered because I didn't I didn't enter the draft. I was going to a smaller college. No one ever went pro from my university. And that meant I would have to sit out for a year. And I said, and they were like, "Coach said, if you want, you can train, you can still work, and then you can try next year." And I said, "Well, thank you, but no thank you. I just want to play." So I packed my bags and I went back to Slovenia after I graduated. Which right now, since I'm older and I think differently, maybe I would stick around, because at that time, and probably still is one of the best leagues in the world, and I was already in there. But I was young, I was stupid, I was not patient at all, and I went back home. I stayed at home for a year. I played half of a year for a team who was playing Champions League qualifications, and there I had 2 opportunities to go and play abroad again. I didn't take them because I was stupid, I was in love, and I decided not to go again. Now I would do it differently, but again, I guess it happened for a reason, and I stayed home for a year. And then after that year was done, I was thinking, okay, I really need to do something now. I need to go abroad. Now I didn't have an agent. So what I decided to do is I texted every single girl that I knew around the world if they can get me a tryout, Again, not like men's football where you have an agent and they arrange everything. No, I texted everyone, and then one girl from Denmark replied and said, listen, I remember I was in a shopping mall, and I said, can you ask your coach if he can give me a tryout at your team? And she was like, yeah, I'll ask him. A few minutes later, she comes back and she's like, can you come on Friday? And I was like, on Friday? Like, that's in 3 days. And she was like, yeah, I'll send you a plane ticket. I was like, okay. I went there it was supposed to be for 3 days. After the first day, I guess I pressed them enough that they said, like, we want to keep you. And I signed my first professional contract in Denmark, where pizza is 25 euros. But I felt like I just conquered the world. I think I was around 22 years old, and that was my first professional contract. And right now, like, people laugh or would laugh at that, but for me it was like I just won a lottery, and this is how my professional journey started. That was Fortuna Hjørring in Denmark at that time, one of the best clubs in Europe, and we played Champions League. It started out great. I played almost everything. We played Champions League against Brescia, which is now Juventus in Italy. We played against Athletic Bilbao, and then we played the quarterfinals against Man City. At that time, I got my next big life lesson, because I came back we played the first 2 teams in the fall, and then Man City in March. I came back in January from the break, and the coach sits me and another girl. We were at the tournament in Germany, indoor tournament, and he goes, can I talk to you two? He sit us down and he's like, for the game against Manchester City, right now you're not in the starting 11, but obviously nothing is set in stone. If you train well, things can change. At that time, again, I was young and I reacted very poorly to that. I was negative, I was angry, and I said, oh my gosh, I was thinking, how can you say to me in January that, you're not going to play me in March? The other girl, though, she reacted completely differently. The outcome, I was negative. I started to train worse, and obviously on the end, I gave him the reason not to play me. And I remember we played on the smaller stadium across the main stadium of Man City. Pep Guardiola was at the game. We played against my favorite women's football player, my idol, Carly Lloyd, and I didn't even warm up. I was at the bench, on the bench the entire time, and the other girl who took things differently in a positive way, she played the entire game. And I was walking out of the stadium after the game, and I promised to myself that, I will never be a victim again. I will never feel sorry for myself again, because essentially it was me who created the whole story, who created the outcome. And also that I'm going to be back one day and play at that stadium. Until the end of the season with Fortuna, obviously, that was the start of my personal work. When you start working on yourself, obviously don't change overnight. So I started to work on myself. I got a one of my friends helped me get into those, like mindset and, like thinking and energies. But I still was not, I was getting better, but I was still in the reactive mode and didn't really see that much of the pitch until the end of the season. So what I did is I decided that I'm going to change the club, and I got an idea that I'm going to go and play in Spain. Didn't speak Spanish, didn't know anyone in Spain, but I decided I'm going to be playing in Spain. What I did is I downloaded a Duolingo, an app, and I started to learn Spanish. And after a while, my friend, one of my best friends, called me, and she goes, for a vacation, we're going to Spain. Do you want to come with? And first I said, listen, no, that's probably going to be close to where I'm going to have to be back at the club again in Denmark. I have to train, I have to get ready. So no, thank you. I was going home after the season and just had that thought in the back of my mind of them going to Spain. So I called her and I said, listen, I'm thinking about coming. She was like, yeah, no worries. We still obviously have, you can come whenever you want. We still have a spot in the apartment. You can just be with us, just book a flight. Whenever I did that, I was on my way to the beach with my parents, and my dad was not going to turn around. So I said, can I come a little bit later? And she goes, yeah, you can come whenever you want. And I said, okay. On the way back from a family vacation, he's just going to drop me off at the airport. I'm going to fly over to Barcelona. And I decided that I'm just not going to go to Barcelona for a vacation. I'm going to go and find myself a club. Didn't speak Spanish, didn't know anyone there, but I'm going to find a club. So I was looking for options. How am I going to do that? I need to get to know people there. So I went on an app of Airbnb, and my first idea would be I'll just rent, an apartment, and I'll get to know people like that. When I opened the app, I saw that Airbnb is offering different activities in different cities. One of them in Barcelona is playing football with the locals and the tourists. And I said, perfect. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and play football with locals, and I'm going to get to know people. My friend said, okay, we're going to go with you. On the end, they didn't, and good thing that they didn't, because it's different if you go somewhere on your own and you have to speak with people than if you go with a group and then you just hang out with your group. So they went out, and I went to play football on the beach. And I remember it was two boys, a boy and a girl from Australia, a guy from London, a guy from India, and a few Spanish people. And I didn't tell them anything. I didn't tell them that I'm technically a professional footballer. So we started playing football, and obviously they realized I can play. So they started asking questions, and the guy who organized the whole thing was like, listen, tomorrow it's another amateur tournament at the fields of FC Barcelona. So across the Camp Nou, next to the Mini, where the academy was training. I don't know if they're still training there, but at that time, the Barca's academy was training there. He's like, we're making a tournament there. Do you want to join? And I said, okay. I don't know anyone, but I'll come. And he's like, just call this guy, just text him and he'll tell you where and when. So I went back home to the hotel. And I said to my friends, listen, tomorrow, I'm going to play football again, so I can hang out with you. And I went there the next day, and I found that guy. And it was one of the biggest, amateur tournaments that they're organizing there. And I just played for a team of girls who were part of the organization, so they had no clue about football. And during the tournament, another team picked me up. They wanted me to be part of their team, and I said, listen, I'm with them. I can only play with you if you let me play for both teams. So I ended up playing for both teams, and with the second team, we played in the final against a national team of Catalonia. which had a coach who was assistant coach of the second team of Espanyol girls. And I said, okay, I need to talk to that guy. He didn't speak English, I didn't speak Spanish, but we managed to communicate, and I managed to tell him, listen, I want to come to Spain and play football. You need to help me. But I cannot, I'm still on a contract in Denmark. I can't come right away. But maybe in 6 months or a year, I want to come over. And he was like, yeah, no worries. Like, this is my contact. Call me whenever you're ready. I went back to Denmark and did the entire preseason with them, played the friendlies, and the last friendly that we had was with the team from Norway, Valencia. And after the game, my coach called me and he's like, the team from Norway wants you to join them. Would you want to go? And I said, listen, I don't think I want to go even more north. I'm already cold here. Can I go to Spain? Can I go, south? And he's like, yeah, I think, to be honest, the club Fortuna Joring is changing the way we're going to be functioning. We're not going to have so many foreigners anymore. We're trying to build with the younger Danish kids. I think they're not going to have problem with that. I said, great. So immediately I texted the guy and I said, listen, I can come now. And he said to me, it was Saturday, and he was like, can you come on Monday? So I called my coach and he's like, on Monday we have the first league game. You can go on Tuesday. So I flew to Barcelona on Tuesday. On Wednesday, whenever I landed, I had a layover in Mallorca. And my coach texted me and he's like, listen, the Valencia has to know if you're coming or not, because tomorrow at midnight, they close the window, the transfer period window. And I said, tomorrow at 9 p.m., I have a friendly game with Espanyol. So I've never met that team, but I have a friendly game with them, like a tryout. After that, I can tell you if I'm going there or not. So I showed up. I played the game with them. I played great. I don't know what happened. I scored 2 incredible goals. I'm a midfielder, but I scored 2 goals. And immediately they said, yeah, we wanna have you. So I called the coach and I said, listen, I'm staying in Spain. The next day, it was a terrorist attack on La Rambla, one of the biggest ones, which was another crazy thing. I went back to the club. I negotiated my contract by myself. On Friday, I flew back to Denmark. And on Tuesday, so next Tuesday, I moved it to Barcelona on my own. Which is, again, another crazy story, another representation of what is possible if you decide to do something, and if you believe in yourself and you believe that you can achieve that. External sources help you and arrange things. I spent a year in Espanyol, which it was professional, but it wasn't. We trained at 8 p.m. at night. Now Spanish leagues is one of the best leagues in the world. Barcelona, probably the best club in the world. And everyone wants to go to Spain. Whenever I was there on the beginning, the circumstances were very different. We trained at 8 p.m. on an artificial pitch. We were the last one on the schedule. And I had to work in order to be able to survive. So I played for Espanyol, and then I worked in the school where the kids who were in the football academy, the boys, were going to school. So, and there was another school, just regular kids as well. So what I was doing is, I didn't speak Spanish, but for 2 hours every single day, I was playing with those kids, and I was working in the comedor in Spanish, which is, I was feeding them pretty much. I was giving them lunch. So my day looked like, in the morning, I would go to the gym, and I was friends with all the security guards and all the maintenance guys, which is the best thing you can ever do, because those are the people that have the keys to everywhere. And if you are good with those people, the quote-unquote no one, those are the best people to have access to, because you can do whatever you want to do if they like you. they liked me, and I was able to train at the same time as this Espanyol's first team, men's, was training. So I was in the gym, and through the glass, I was watching their training on the pitch, literally like 2 meters away from me. And then when a guy who was working for the second team there saw me training, he offered me to the help. So I was training every morning by myself, then I went to work, and then at night I was training with the girls, with the team. On one side, I love my life in Barcelona, but at the same time, I just wanted a true professionalism. So that was the time that I finally got myself an agent, and at that time, agents started to come around to women's football, and I got myself a Spanish agent. From Espanyol, I went to Malaga. The club just got promoted, but we had great conditions. We had natural grass. We trained in the morning for the first time in my life, and I was playing on and off. I wasn't playing all the time, but I also wasn't constantly on the bench. And from there, every single afternoon, I trained on a concrete handball pitch by myself again, because I wanted to go even higher. In the summer, I went home and I said to my agent, now I'm ready. I really want to go somewhere where, it's a proper huge club and I can be a true professional. So he helped me and we went straight to AC Milan. I signed a contract with AC Milan in 2019, and that was the best season I've had so far. At that time, I think that was the second year that AC Milan had women. I remember we were training in Vismara and we were playing in Monza on the men's stadium. And one of the best games that I've ever played was against Inter, the first derby that we had. Scored 2 goals and we won 4-1, I think. One of the best memories. Long story short, second year in AC Milan, I came to another obstacle, which is I realized that, I'm overtraining. I burn myself out because working on myself for quite many years, then I realized that deep down I had the belief that I'm not good enough and that I'm missing something. And when you're coming from that perspective, no matter what you do and how hard you work, you will never be enough. But what will happen is you're gonna burn out. You're just, at some point, you're gonna start to go down. And that's what it happened to me in AC Milan. My performances started to go down. I didn't feel good. On the end, I left the club. I went to Valencia. There it was another interesting thing, another lesson which I learned is that I was recruited by a sports director and not by the coach. So I wasn't really on the same page with the coach, and after 6 months I left. Came to Sampdoria, again back to Italy. And in Sampdoria, for the first 6 months, it was great. And then the club started to have financial problems. So it was the first time in my career where I was technically professional, but I was in a very insecure situation where we were not paid. We were not the men's side, not the women's side, no one. Club was falling apart. We didn't know if the club will survive or not. So for the majority of that year, we were just not getting the salaries. Obviously, after the end of that season, I decided to leave, and it was, I wouldn't say the worst, but probably one of the worst experiences that I had, because technically you taste of what it can be or how it is when you're paid for something that you love to do, but at the same time you keep doing that, but you don't have the resources coming in. We managed to save the club still. We managed to stay in the league, in the Serie A. We managed to, on the end, get some money, almost everything. Yeah, but it was definitely an experience that I wouldn't want to anyone to have. After that, I went back to Spain, and then after a year in Barcelona, in Levante Las Planas, I ended up here in Como. First in Como Women, and now I'm part of the Como 1907, so 1907, and the club that has a great project. It's the first time I'm in Serie B, so it's first time in second league, which in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit hard on my ego. But then I realized that, the most important thing that can happen to you or that you can do for yourself is to be in an environment that it's very supportive and that makes you happy and that values you and brings the best out of you. And that's exactly what it's happening here with me now. I feel valued, I feel supported, I feel, part of a great club, part of a great project, next to great people who are really, really, really putting a lot in women's side, and I'm very grateful and fortunate to be here. So yeah, that's a long story, not that short. Try to be short, with a lot of ups and downs, and didn't even get to talk about my national team. But yeah, that's my national team is something that I'm very proud of. I've been part of the national team for at least 15 years. Captain there, vice captain, sometimes captain. And we are currently going to play in Nations League A, among the best countries in Europe, trying to fight for a spot in the World Cup 2027 in Brazil. And that's another thing that probably the biggest goal that I have is playing on one of the big tournaments, either Euros or World Cup or both, preferably, in the near future. And very proud to represent my country. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my story. I hope that it inspired you. I hope that it showed you that no matter where you're from, no matter what you want to do in your life, no matter how hard that seems or how impossible or how you can't even imagine how to get there, everything's possible. You just kind of have to start. First of all, you have to believe in yourself and then do whatever it's in your power in order to get what you want. And then whenever you do your part, everything else will fall in place as well.